Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to see a few of you here in attendance, and we will talk a little bit about what's been going on. Uh, Everybody knows, most of you know my situation that my husband passed away in September, so I've been on a little hiatus and trying to ease back into things and stay busy and just try to work on my healing process. And aromatherapy is one great way to do that, I can tell you. It's been helping me in more than one way. And it just seems like there's been so many different positive things happening that kind of overshadows the sadness. And you'll begin to see why. And some of these things actually were implemented even before anything ever happened. So that just goes to show to me how God works. It's something that he may have known was going to happen, and some of these things are in place to help get me through it. So, with on that note, we're going to talk about some aromatherapy opportunities. What will you do in 2026? There are so many opportunities that I wanted to share with you, and I wanted to do this in the form of a video or a webinar because it's just too many things to share, and I just can't sit and message everyone individually or even put it in a newsletter. I feel like you will have a better understanding by seeing a visual of what um, is going to be taking place in my life. Now, these opportunities that we're going to talk about are not necessarily the only opportunities that'll come up. But these are the ones that I have committed to for this year. So, for those of you who are new or have not been a part of multicultural aromatherapy, this is just a little bit about my personal background. In 2005, I founded the first African American direct selling alliance. And when I had a client that had aromatherapy products in her line, particularly essential oils, that's when I began my aromatherapy training because was responsible for training a group of people here as her sales rep, and I didn't know how to use essential oils, and so she put me in touch with a teacher that was on her staff as one of her formulators, and she taught me via correspondence and telephone in 2007. So in 2008, um, I founded Multicultural Aromatherapy because I just wanted to transition from business coaching to aromatherapy. I just had this gut feeling that this was the way to go. And that was the right move at the right time. So some people may wonder, how can she go from learning aromatherapy and then a year later start teaching it? Well, basically, I've been doing missionary work for over 35 years. And with that, comes a school called Pioneer Service School. And with that school, we are trained on teaching people the Bible. So we are considered Bible educators and ministers, and we do different community work. Um, and some of that work included, has included teaching people how to read or to read better. And so I took the experience that I had from being in this missionary work since 1988 into my aromatherapy training in 2007. So those of you who have gone through the multicultural aromatherapy program know that it's quite different from the other aromatherapy programs out there. And we're going to get a little bit more into that in the next slide. In 2003, I do have a background in fibromyalgia. I'm a fibromyalgia patient advocate, a blogger. I used to be a blogger at Bella Online for Women. I ran a fibromyalgia support group for 10 years at a local hospital here. And I participated in a fibromyalgia international documentary called Show Me Where It Hurts. So my specialty in aromatherapy is chronic pain and fibromyalgia. And in 2022, I announced a natural hair care blog to share the dangers of chemicals in hair care products and educate on anti-hair shaming. That's a passion of mine because when I first started coaching in 2005, I was coaching women who had their own natural hair care products. That was a movement going on, like in the early 2000s when Carol's Daughter and Eden Body Works, and which Eden Body Works was one of my clients, um, Indigo Farah, Miss Jessie's, all of these natural black hair care lines started coming out like in the late 90s, early 2000s. And people were transitioning into getting rid of the relaxers and learning how to take care of our hair naturally. And so what started as a movement now is sort of like a way of life. But at the same time, many people today who have their own natural hair care products, they're transitioning into the market or going to a manufacturer. Once it goes to a manufacturer, the products become more and more chemical. So if you notice product lines like Shea Moisture, Mielle, some of these other brands that went from the basement or into you mixing it up in your kitchen to mass production in a manufacturer, or it was bought out. It was usually bought out by companies that were people that were not of color. And so those products became more and more chemical. So this natural hair care blog that I plan on one day when I get some time set up will be that type of education to let people, consumers know when a natural hair care product is no longer considered a natural product due to manufacturing changes and when it's no longer a Black owned company. So that's something that I probably will, start working on this summer. So, interactive. So we have a chat box here on Zoom. So these are 3 questions that I want you to think about. The first one is, what do you feel is missing in the aromatherapy industry that you would like to see? So if you want to think about that question and maybe put something in the chat, um, I'll kind of, glance at it right quick and then, um, then we can, see how, I'll see if what you're missing, if the information I'm going to share with you going to include what you feel is missing. And then also, question number 2, what can we do to assist you in your training and your business? And question number 3, to those who are part of the Multicultural Aromatherapy alumni, will you please share your experience training with me at Multicultural Aromatherapy? So if you feel brave enough to say an audio at the end, we can entertain that for question number 3. But the other questions You can put those in the chat, and then toward the end or maybe midway, I'll kind of glance at it, and then we can look at them and see, because we're trying to get a little feedback. People, those of us in the aromatherapy world right now, we're trying to get a little feedback. So we're trying to find out what people need and how we can meet their needs. Okay. So, updates, aromatherapy 2026 updates. So, as I mentioned, I founded Multicultural Aromatherapy in 2008 and became the first African American owned school of aromatherapy. I usually launch everything in February 2008. And there were two other people that went virtual, but they were not live. One came out, I think, in the spring to summer, which would be Andrea Buttigieg. She passed away last year, but her company, Aroma Head, is being run by a mother and daughter team, Jenny and Karen, I believe. And so they were the first to have a 100%, I guess, correspondent, well, not correspondence, but um, uh, website for aromatherapy training. So Andrea had recorded videos, and you could take the test online and work at your own pace. When I started out, I didn't have that kind of money. And I didn't have the number of clients, of course, that would be interested in that. So, and also, by that time, I had taken a live class. Oh no, maybe I haven't, but that was something that I wished I could take and had a goal to take a live course because um doing correspondence, even though I did talk with my teacher, my initial teacher, and so we went over information over the phone because she was in London. And then I would have to turn in work based off of the books that she recommended. And so that was my first experience. So I did get some interaction with the teacher, and I felt like that was needed. And that's the way I wanted to start my program. So the first time I taught classes, it wasn't a certification course, but they were just aromatherapy classes. And it was through freeconferencecall.com. If some of you old schoolers remember that. And then when I became a founding member of Real Sisters Rising, she was very good about giving us different resources. And one of the resources that she did was GoToMeeting. And she, at the time, those kind of platforms were very, very expensive. And my course didn't last but maybe 8 weeks. And so I didn't want to pay for that for every month. And a lot of us had similar businesses. So what she did was her organization um, got the account, and then she rented us rooms during the time period that we needed it, and that helped pay for it. So we sort of all grassroots root together. And that's how I ended up teaching it via webinar. And then different people started coming out, like Any Meeting and Fuse and different platforms. And I would sign up for the trial or sign up, for the cheap ones. And then because mine was seasonal, I would stop it. And then when I got ready to teach it again, I would just include that into the cost of the course. So that's how I got started back in 2008. So in 2020, well, I kind of like worked under the radar up until about 2020. You know, I'll probably get more into it on the next class. about why I worked under the radar. Basically, a group of people tried to run me out of business. So I didn't want to the internet trolling. So I started just reaching out to clients, and basically it was like word of mouth sort of situation. And I didn't really, show myself that much on the internet. And so in 2020, when the pandemic hit and everybody was looking for stuff to do, the Tisserand Institute reached out to me and was wondering my experience as an African American aromatherapist. And they were concerned that we didn't have any, or they were wondering where everyone was. And by this time, I maybe had trained 75 myself. I said, they're out there. They're just teaching locally, or they're just sort of under the radar. And just everybody's kind of like doing their own thing, because we just did not feel included in the industry at all. And that was one of the things that they wanted to do to help change that. So, um, from that point, I attended my first aromatherapy conference virtually, and that was the NAHA conference. So for those of you who don't know who NAHA is, it's NAHA, and that's the National Association of Holistic Aromatherapy. So that's a um, aromatherapy organization. So that was the one that was presenting at the time, and it was 100% virtual due to the pandemic. My husband had asked me at the time, what did I want for anniversary? And that's what I told him. I want a plane ticket an aromatherapy conference. Well, at the time, before the pandemic, they had it scheduled for, I think it was in Utah. So I was gonna fly to Utah and attend in person. But then when the pandemic hit, they moved it to a virtual platform. But we still were able to interact just like we do kind of like on Zoom. That's when everybody was learning Zoom and learning how to do all this virtually. And so one of the things that I asked was the president of NAHA, Annette Davis, had did a presentation, and she talked about the beginnings of her aromatherapy career and how she became an aromatherapist. And she actually had a grandmother that was like one of the founders of the very first organization. And she did a lot of work in the aromatherapy world that before aromatherapy became what it is today. And so when during the Q&A portion, she asked, I asked the question because we were able to raise our hand and ask a question. And so I said, I've been kind of researching who my teachers are just out of curiosity. And some of the information that I'm finding, I noticed that we have Rene Gattefossé in 1937 coined the term aromatherapy. Then we have Jean Valnet came after him, and then Margaret Murray. And in some of the later books that I've been seeing, some people are mentioning Robert Tisserand. So my question to her was there any other resource or was there a book that will tell us our aromatherapy lineage and all of the people that founded aromatherapy or in the work that they did? And she said, I don't think so. She said that we don't have that. She said, maybe somebody will write it one day. And you know what my curious mind did? I said to myself, maybe I'll do that. So in 2021, that's where the idea came to research aromatherapy lineage. So my idea was to just kind of put out this little quick ebook so that everybody can go and trace their lineage. That was the whole idea behind the aromatherapy lineage project. But I was taking during the pandemic, of course, I took Scylla Shepherd Hanger's healing course, and it gave me access to the back portion of the website. So I got like a double bonus. So I'm going through all of the stuff, and she starts talking about her lineage. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And then she had her website, vintagearomatherapist.com. So when I went to the website, and I was like, I've never heard of any of these people. And these people were here in the early 90s, some in the 80s. And so it just, I just went crazy. So once I saw all of that, I realized that it was more, the more research I did, the more it turned into the word heritage. And so this future book is going to be on aromatherapy heritage. In 2023, I came up with the term aromatherapy lineage project because the year prior, I was told by someone that there was this project coming out called the aromatic hologram that was similar. And it was coming out in 2023 with these interviews. So I was like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking, all of a sudden somebody want to do that. And then I get all of these messages from some of my colleagues and past um, students that when they saw the website, it was purple. And they said, somebody stole your idea. I mean, everybody just went crazy. And I was like, wait, before we go into that, let me find out more about this. So I reached out to the American liaison of the project to find out more about it and tell them about my project. And I wanted to team up with them. Well, she wasn't the originator, so she contacted the originator. And they kind of told me no. And I said, okay. They have, I know, because it's just videos. And technically, I really didn't have to ask. All I had to do was if I did use any of the information in the book, you just put the reference, just like all other authors do. So I said, and then I mentioned it to the person that told me about the project because he told me about it again. I said, well, they didn't want me to really use the information from their video. They said something like it was protected and all this kind of stuff. I said, so I didn't want to get into any kind of thing with them. And so he said, you know what? He said, why aren't you doing your own interviews? He said, yeah, do your own interviews. And he said, if there's somebody that you reach out to, if I know them, I'll reach out to them and we can set up, I can, be the go-to person. So I ended up getting several top named aromatherapists being interviewed. Some of them I just reached out to myself. The Tishman Institute already reached out to me. So I already had their information. And Robert Tishman was like one of the second people that I interviewed. And then there were other people. I said, well, I need to know this. I need to know that. And it just turned into this whole project that was so overwhelming. And that's probably why the book is not done and probably won't be done this year, even though we do have the aromatherapy conference coming up. And I would love to have it there, but there's going to be people at that conference that I'm going to meet that's from other countries that need to be in the book. So I need to really talk to them because I write the information better after I have connected with the person that I'm writing about. Because I can read stuff about them all day long, but once I have a conversation with them, then it just seems like everything flows better. So that is one of the projects that I'm continuing to work on. Um, I had some setbacks, of course, and some of it is the fact that I wasn't able to use some resources that I thought I could use that would make it a little bit faster. So, but I do love the fact that I've gotten to meet some really great people that no one else may have ever met. So, turned out to be a positive. So, in 2024, coined the term Afro aromatherapy and also developed a technique called aroma press technique, which is like a myofascial release. And I done that in 2023. So, moving ahead here in 2026, I became the first African American AIA board member. Not the first board member. You'll find out who that is on the 25th when we have the other conference. So in 2026, also, the Afro Aromatherapy Future course is in the works. So I've one thing that we're going to focus on are oils from Africa. And so I am ordering oils from Africa, different regions, and I'm going to study these oils, use them, come up with recipes. So that's going to take some time to do that. So that's going to be a part of the course is examining oils from Africa. And then also in 2026, um, we hope to introduce the Black Aromatherapy Alliance. We don't know the name yet. um, or some type of organization that will help to unite Black aromatherapists around the world. That's why I'm using the term Black instead of African American, because I do know there's a couple of people in England and a few people from the Caribbean that we would like to bring in with the American aromatherapists, and all of us can support each other. And so that is something that we will talk about on the 25th in detail. And also, of course, I have not forgotten about the fibromyalgia book, but at the end of this presentation, you will be happy about something that will pertain to fibromyalgia. So some of the events that I'll be participating in, of course, I talked about the HPOC conference. The HPOC conference launched about 2 or 3 things back in September. And one of them is the Black Herbalist Society, was launched in 2025 at the HPOC conference, and a Kemetic sorority. So this is the first ever sorority for a natural or holistic health school. First ever sorority. Yay. So you're going to really feel like you're really in school, being a part of this sorority. It's called Sata Nibet. I think that's how it's pronounced. And I did listen to a conference call. They started the getting the pledges for this year together at the end of December. But because of all of the commitments that I have going on within the next 6 months, I couldn't commit to that because it was just, you got to pledge. I mean, and so I really got to get this business stuff going. Um, and so it just wasn't, but I do plan on, looking into it in the future. It's something that I really feel would be wonderful to have a part to make you really feel like you at a university. So HPOC always have a conference each year. I'm giving you the dates early and the place so that we can make our plans. They will start maybe around the spring, I think. Last year was around the spring. They started setting things up. So they're kind of like a little delayed versus what some of the other conferences, because this is a smaller conference, so it may not take as much as some of the, you know, like AIA conference. So I will let you know. And plus, if you're following HPOC already, then you'll get that information. But it'll be September 17th through 19th, 2026 in the